of flow. If you do happen to have technical difficulties, please use the help function provided by Adobe Connect. The support team there should be able to help you a lot better than I would be able to. After the presentation, you will be sent out the link to the recording as well as a survey about your experience. And as always, you are welcome to contact me with any questions or concerns or follow up, or if you're interested in hosting a webinar of your own in the future. Questions are welcome and encouraged throughout the presentation. Nicole has made it a really interactive presentation for you today, so I hope that you'll ask questions and engage and participate throughout. There will also be time at the end if you do have any follow-ups. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce and turn it over to Nicole Osborne. She graduated from Syracuse University in 2014 with a BA in Policy Studies. Since then, she has been a continuous advocate and partner for the university and very active young alumna. She is currently serving as the chair of Generation Orange for the Alumni Club in Atlanta and as membership chair on our newly founded Generation Orange Leadership Council. She is also outside of Syracuse University participating in a nonprofit as on the board of directors. She definitely believes in staying connected and involved as you progress in your life and career, and thinks it's an important aspect of giving back. So I hope you enjoy her presentation and engage and ask questions throughout, since it's engagement anyways. Nicole, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jenna, and thank you everyone for joining the webinar today. If you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself in the chat box function that we have here by sharing your name, your class year, and your major, and your university if you didn't attend Syracuse, and any other information that you want to share with the group, just so we know who's here and get a gauge of everybody's background. While y'all are doing that, I'll go ahead and introduce myself a little bit more. My name is Nicole, and like Jenna said, I was a policy studies major and have continued to stay involved in the way that Jenna described. On campus, I was a member of the Full Circle Mentoring Program and WellsLink Mentoring in the Office of Multicultural Affairs. And I was also very heavily involved in student affairs in general. So I was an RA for 2 years in Del Plaine Hall and in Marion Hall, and I was on the University Conduct Board. So I definitely got to see various parts of the university from a student life perspective, and it really shaped my understanding of what engagement should look like as a student and fueled my passion to stay engaged as an alum. All right, thank you, Peter and Eric, for sharing. Awesome. We definitely have a mixture of backgrounds here, which I love. Feel free to ask any questions in the chat box as I move forward as well. So you might be wondering why I decided to call this webinar Keep Squeezing. Of course, we are the Syracuse Orange, so, oranges, orange juice makes sense maybe, but the real title or the real inspiration behind this came from a presentation that my family and I saw during my first admitted students event on campus. I think it was a spring open house in the spring of 2011. And one of the admissions officers there made this analogy to the families in attendance. And he basically said, if you think of Syracuse University as an orange, make sure you squeeze it for all it's got and make sure you use all the resources that are available to you and just make the most out of this experience on campus. And so throughout my time, when I would call my parents and I would check in, my dad would ask me, are you squeezing? Like, are you getting the juice out of campus? And I think it was kind of a way for him to ask me if I was spending his money well, but at the same time, it helped me keep into perspective why I was here and what opportunities I wanted to seize while I was on campus. And so although I definitely try to make the most of that, I also have continued to make the most out of my time at SU as a lifelong journey of learning and leadership. And so that is the perspective that I've taken through alumni engagement activities and really community engagement as a whole. So now we have three numbers here, and I would love your participation in guessing what the first number or what each number represents, starting with the first one, 65,574. Does anybody have a guess, or does anybody know what that number represents? I see some people typing, so I'll wait to see your response. Yes, Aaron Smith, the cost of attendance for 1 year at Syracuse. So that is correct. Do we have any guesses on the second number, 25? And that is for the latest school year. So that's for 2016-17, according to the Bursar's office website. 25. And then if anybody also has a guess for the 258,716, take those as well right now. Yes, it's a very costly year. I'll go ahead and tell you all. Oh, Peter has some guesses, it looks like. Oh, wait a second. Nope. Okay. So 25 is the percent of students of color that represent the student body. So whether or not, we have opinions on if that's good or bad, or like what does that breakdown look like? For me, I think it's just a meaningful thing to know, like what does diversity look like on campus? And then the 258,716 is the current number of alumni on record. And that includes all 58 states, the District of Columbia, and 171 countries and territories. So for me, that's extremely exciting because in my like alumni engagement hat, that's like almost, 258,000 people that I could be friends with, or that I instantly have something else in common with, and that I share something with. So when you think about alumni engagement in your city, in the nation, and across the world, that is a huge number to me, and it's really exciting and an opportunity to get connected. So it is Student Philanthropy Week on campus, and I wanted to introduce this idea of like what is philanthropy and how do I think about it and how is it easily translated into our life. So oftentimes I think you'll hear philanthropy described in three ways: giving your time, talents, and treasures. And so that's basically the order of the presentation that I've created for you all today. Starting off with time and talents, because I think a lot of times this is what we feel most comfortable giving and talking about. And so, especially as a young person, while all three ways of giving are extremely beneficial and necessary, these two I think are the easiest to discuss. So it's very simple, I think, as just a starting point to meet SU where you are. For me, I think people often think of networking as a one-time thing, but there's a lot of ways you can get involved and actually shine through your leadership experience in these different ways. So a little bit more about the Generation Orange Leadership Council. It just started last year for the first time, and Generation Orange includes alumni within the last 10 years. So right now that would be from 2006 to 2016, and then when the next graduating class graduates in May, it'll be 2007 to 2017. Currently, our council has 28 members, and we have a couple different committees that plan different events and consider engagement in these ways. So there's events in general that includes game watches, speaking panels, etc. And then there's a career services and lifelong learning committee, which Jenna serves as our advisor for in the Office of Career Services. And then we also have a fundraising committee. And just FYI, if anybody is interested in joining the committee, we will begin our process for recruiting new members based on the open spots that we have this coming summer. So if you want more information on that, be on the lookout, and I would be your contact person for that. In relation to meeting SU in your city or in your town, there are alumni clubs. There's usually a regional admissions officer that's assigned to different parts of the country. And then there's also lifelong learning opportunities, such as this career services webinar. So no matter what your interest is, if it's watching games, but you want to take it a step further, you could volunteer with your alumni club to maybe host a game watch or add another layer of engagement to a game watch. There's leadership positions related to fundraising, bookkeeping for alumni clubs, being the secretary, managing social media channels, whatever your experience or forte is, there's definitely a way to plug in there. And then I think admissions is obviously a very important aspect as we recruit the future of the university, but it's also a very fun way to get involved and kind of sell your SU story to high school students. So oftentimes admissions officers need volunteers to help set up at college fairs, there's student send-offs, there's usually admitted students events. So right now there's admitted students events throughout the country while students know that they've been accepted to Syracuse, but they might not have made their decision to commit and attend. So that's one way that you can engage with young people and also advocate for the university. And then related to career services, there are always job shadowing opportunities and immersion trips, even just connecting with people on LinkedIn and having informational interviews. It's always an opportunity to share your professional experience with current students and alumni alike. All right, so moving on to giving your time and talents, what comes to mind when you all hear the word volunteer? Helping, yes, definitely. Time, giving your time is usually a really easy and simple way to volunteer, maybe like park cleanups, community service, taking on tasks that others may not want to take on in the office or within your organization, and giving back. Definitely. I think these are all general, definitions of what it means to volunteer, right? So for me, I think the purpose of this webinar and my personal outlook when it comes to volunteering is to be strategic about it. So I've tried to adopt this idea of strategic volunteering where you meet the needs of an organization, you help fill in the gaps. Maybe, it's more hands on deck, or maybe it's a park cleanup, but then taking it a step further to consider what personally fulfills you and how can you match that with your career objectives and also the needs of an organization. So this is, in a way, just volunteering with a larger goal in mind for you. And so I have this really simple, easy formula that basically addresses interest plus career skills equals, or I'm sorry, interest plus skills equals career moves. So, especially as a young person, I think volunteering allows you to spend more time developing your interests, and then you can find an organization that's a good fit for you. Whereas strategic volunteering also allows you to develop your skills. You can pick an area that you want to grow in and then move from good to great or from great at something to maybe a pro level skill. So you can pair strategic volunteering with your day job or with whatever you really want to do in life and then actually grow in ways that you are seeking to. So you can make lasting connections and then also nourish them through your work and your community. Moving on to nonprofit board leadership, I think this is an opportunity to really be more dedicated to one specific organization in ways that require a little bit more commitment. So there's a lot of information here on this slide, but I think it's a really good overview of what board service entails. And for me, I think if you focus on the three concepts on the right of the duties of care, loyalty, and obedience. So the duty of care would be that each board member has a legal responsibility to participate actively in making decisions on behalf of the organization and exercise his or her best judgment while doing so. Duty of loyalty, meaning that each board member puts the interest of an organization before their own personal and professional interests when they're acting on behalf of the organization and making decisions. And then the duty of obedience means that each board member is legally responsible for ensuring that the organization complies with any applicable state, federal, and local laws and adheres to its mission. So I think this is definitely an opportunity for me to learn more because I've been on a board for almost a year now and I'm only 24. So it's a huge learning curve for me, but it's also a great way to get involved and actually learn a lot as I help fundraise. And then, as I'll tell you more in a little bit, I'm actually on a board that serves people in South Africa. So adhering to both South African laws and US laws in relation to audits and financial literacy is definitely a huge opportunity for growth and learning. So before joining a board, there's probably a lot of steps that somebody should do, but these are the three that I've pointed out that work for me and what I have learned through my experience. So first of all, always do your research on the organization. Make sure it's obviously credible, has a solid foundation, and something that you are personally aligned to in relation to its mission. Always ask what the expectations are of you as a board member. So, what is the financial responsibility that you'll be held accountable for, if any? What are the strategic imperatives? So, what is the mission of the board going forward, and how can you plug into them and ensure that they're executed? And then also consider how you're expected to leverage your own network. So, this could vary highly depending on the size of the organization and the size of the board. So always ask questions up front before signing the commitment and also understand what the term is that you're expected to serve. And then obviously, as most boards have nonprofit missions, consider what your personal objectives are and why, and if you really truly believe that your personal objectives align with the organization. So my experience at Incluleco started when I was a student at SU. I studied abroad in Grahamstown, South Africa in May of 2014 and basically just stayed in touch with them. It was a summer program, so I was there for, I believe it was 4 to 6 weeks, and I really had a transformational experience, I think, just actually being on the ground and volunteering with an organization at an after school program. So I was specifically partnered with an organization called Upstart, and it was an after school program that developed web, TV, radio, and newspaper publications with high school students. And Incluleco is a partner of Upstart's, and we basically provide tutoring services and help students build life skills and social enterprise skills to make it to university. So we help them with tutoring, getting their grades up, and then studying for the course tests so that they can apply to college, and we help them with that process as well. So as secretary of the board now, I essentially lead projects that align to my interest and my skill set along with the organization's needs. So right now that looks like a learner and staff and stakeholder survey process that I help design and implement, and also building assessment models with our students. So considering how we as an organization measure our success and what's important to us and how do we measure the growth in our learners. I also recruit and partner with interns that are from SU actually. So the SU ties really run deep. We have a number of interns from the Newhouse School that have helped develop videos. They help write our annual reports with design, skills, and fundraising. I believe there's an Incluleco club on campus at Syracuse as well as Lemoyne College and SUNY Brockport. And I'm also now working on a project to get more technology like laptop computers and increased internet bandwidth into the classroom. So I like to share this experience with people. Like Megan said, we've been, I think I've known, Jenna for almost a year now. And, it's a funny story just how I got started with Incluleco just by literally studying abroad and then staying in touch with them. And I think studying abroad opportunities are definitely a way to see a global perspective on community engagement and what it looks like and how you can take that experience and translate it into your everyday life in some form or another once you return home. I would also say that just a shout out to the SU Abroad office, because a lot of students that do study abroad with this particular program, they stay connected, and we've had students host benefit concerts on campus that will then donate the proceeds of the concert to Incluleco. So I think that's a really simple way you can start to merge things that you're already involved with to benefit an organization that you've dedicated your time to. So that's more about what I've done and how I translate this into my everyday life. Now I'd like to move on to consider how somebody else can contribute. And before that, I will answer this question. How would you suggest somebody finds boards to be a part of that they didn't already have connections to? I think that's a really good question. I think I would certainly consider doing research on nonprofits in your area, and then based off of what you're looking to gain, also what aligns with you personally. So you could start by saying, okay, like I personally feel very passionate about education. So let me see like what education nonprofits are in my area and that are also looking for board members. And you can do that through different websites like Charity Navigator or GuideStar that rates organizations. And I think you can search them by location. And then you could also start volunteering at one or trying to get introduced to someone that's on that board or somebody that works at that organization, and then see if they have any call for board members. So I would say just leveraging different avenues of research and then trying to meet somebody in an organization to get more of an understanding about what the actual needs are. So this gets down into like the nitty gritty of like what should my contribution be, because I think it's really easy for people to see others doing things, but then there's always this question of I want to be involved, but how do I start? So I would start with these 3 questions, and they're pulled from an article from the Harvard Business Review on managing yourself. But the first question is, what does the situation require? The second question is, knowing my strengths, values, and current capacity to perform, how can I make the greatest contribution? And then the third question is, what results need to be achieved to make a difference? Now I'll go into each question and dig a little deeper into steps you can take to answer them. So what does the situation require? First, I would suggest to ask the point of contact at the university or at the organization to see what their needs are. You can also start going to meetings and events and observe what you believe the situation requires, and then schedule a meeting with somebody or display your interest, also providing a recommendation of what you've observed. So for example, I started going to the SU Alumni Club events in Atlanta, and eventually they asked me basically, would you be willing to organize the Generation Orange events for young alumni? And I said yes. And I started doing it, and I planned some happy hours, planned meetups, and I met different people who I've now become close with, and it's really great. But then at the same time, as I look at the social media channels and the websites for the Alumni Club, I realize that there's not a lot of faces on there. Like, there's no pictures of real people. So I basically started just taking pictures of all the events, and I've kind of become like the self-appointed photographer for the Alumni Club. And at this point, I feel like it's an obligation of my own to make sure that I bring my camera to every event so that people will know like who is there, they can see how much fun we had, and actually document our activities. But I think this is a great precursor to just understanding like what the needs are and how you might be able to fill those gaps. Secondly, knowing your strengths, values, current capacity to perform, how can you make the greatest contribution? I think knowing your strengths is definitely the first step, and it takes a lot of reflection and feedback from other people. So when I was in school, I was participating in different programs that allowed me to take the Myers-Briggs test, to take the True Colors test, and a lot of different tools out there to actually understand like what my strengths were, and not in a way that it would put me in a box, but so I could just reflect and say, oh yeah, I think I am, better at independent work or whatever it might be. And then also considering to incorporate books like Strengths Finders or Emotional Intelligence that you can do on your own and then bring to a group discussion. Secondly, I think seeking feedback based on evidence of your skills and results is really helpful. So, I think sometimes we think we're a pro at things, but we might actually not be. So just think of actual ways that you've succeeded in things and ask feedback from your managers, your coworkers, or your friends related to what your glows are. Thirdly, definitely reflect on what fulfills you and how to get more of it. I think this is something that I had to learn as a young adult, to say, yes, this might be part of my job, or yes, this is something that I've been doing, but does it actually make me happy? Like, am I good at it? And if so, how do I do more of it? How do I just actually do things that make me happy? And how do I become more successful in my work? And then, of course, be realistic about the time that you have to dedicate, as you also reflect on what fulfills you and what your strengths are. Also consider your schedule and not ever overpromise or overcommit yourself to different activities. And so you're always staying balanced and have a manageable time schedule. And thirdly, what results need to be achieved to make a difference? So this is what it's really all about, right? Like we all kind of want to see results in one way or the other, and how you measure those results might look different from one situation to the next. So before you start volunteering somewhere, I would always say to set goals for yourself and the organization to align on. So you can have two sets of goals or you can just have one, but as long as you know like what the achievable outcome will be, then you can measure your progress along the way. This is something that I think it's easy to just start doing things and then keep in this reactive cycle of, oh, people want to see more professional learning opportunities. Like, let's just keep doing that. And then you become less planned, I think, sometimes than what's beneficial. So I think taking the time to set goals and benchmarks is definitely something that is not always intuitive and it's not fun because it's more fun to just execute for some of us, but it's necessary. And also consider your own project management skills that you can develop along the way. And I think for me, especially as a young person, we don't always get management skills at work, or we might not always be able to truly own a project from start to finish. And so volunteering, especially in alumni engagement activities, has allowed me to really model and grow in this area. All right, so now we're going to move on to giving money, which is the treasure section. Does anybody else have any questions related to giving your time or talents before we move on? All right, so right now we'll just do a quick poll on giving. So if you wouldn't mind responding in this poll area and answer the question, have you ever made a financial gift? So it could be a gift to your university, a gift to a nonprofit, maybe both, or maybe not yet, but you really want to, and maybe after this webinar you'll consider it. All right, cool. So it looks like we have about 60% of our participants today have given in some way financially, which I think is great. It definitely is something that we need to consider as we give our time and talents, I think more willingly, but giving financially is still an important aspect of philanthropy. So I did a very informal survey of my friends and kind of considered what might young alumni say about giving. And this could apply to anybody regardless of age, because I think sometimes we're all a little protective of our pockets. But here are some of the things that people might say about giving. What? My tuition wasn't already enough. So as I mentioned, we all saw how much it cost to attend SU for 1 year. Definitely not an easy lift. So I think it's a common reaction when young alumni are asked to give and we feel like we literally just graduated and like I just got used to having a paycheck. Can I just enjoy this moment for a second? So I think that's a very common response. Secondly, when somebody called me, I gave, and it was more personal than a mailer. So consider how you could appeal to different populations differently based off of emotions, perhaps, or like the personal aspect of being on the phone with somebody or being face to face compared to a piece of paper. And then there's this sentiment of, when I'm financially stable, I'll give back. And then when I realized it wasn't just giving to the school, but that I could give to the program that meant something to me, maybe people felt more willing to give when they realized that it wasn't just going toward something that they didn't necessarily feel passionate about at the university. So, what do I say about giving? I say work it into your annual budget. If you need a good budgeting tool, you can always download a sample spreadsheet online. I do believe that the financial aid website of Syracuse University has some financial literacy tools that are available. I used them as a student and found them very useful, and I think they're still there. And then also consider the fact that no amount is ever too small to give. When it comes to young alumni giving initiatives, as a council, we do not usually base our success off of the amount of contributions, but rather the number of people who participated. So when we consider, what is a successful initiative and how do we know if we've achieved it, keep that in mind that nobody is ever judging you based off of the amount that you're giving. Also, pick an area on campus that's meaningful for you to donate your money to, and then select that in the drop-down menu when you go to give to SU. Something that I learned recently within the last year or so is that you can actually write in any portion of campus that you want to give to, and the university will allocate those funds as you have noted. So I think sometimes it can be discouraging when you see just a list of funds or, really broad, like the School of Engineering or the School of Education. Like you can say, like, I want this to go to this specific program or like this major, and the university will work with you to make sure it's allocated appropriately. And then, of course, make sure that you do your research on any nonprofits or other organizations that you're giving to make sure that they are financially responsible with their funds. And you can do this with tax returns or financial statements that are available online on sites like Charity Navigator and GuideStar. And so, Jenna, to respond to your question earlier about, how do you get connected to a nonprofit organization if you don't actually know somebody there? I think this is a really good way to do your research, whether it's preliminary or even just digging deeper into the organizations that you have been introduced to. All right, so in full transparency, I think it's important for me to share what I give, and that is the simple answer is whatever is reasonable for me, like in that year or in that moment. I think some of us may have seen the news recently that Chance the Rapper donated $1 million to Chicago Public Schools, which is fantastic, right? And $1 million is probably an appropriate amount for a Grammy Award winning artist, but it's not for most of us. And so keeping that in mind and not feeling the pressure to give like super large amounts is what I think keeps me grounded and encouraged to give. And programs and websites that have automatic reoccurring gifts make it really easy because then the money is just deducted through your account and then they'll send you the tax forms that you need to file with later on at the end of the year. So for me, I give to SU $44 4 times a year to a scholarship fund. And then I also give $7 a month to my local NPR station because I love listening to public radio. And I also have my board pledges to Incluleco. So for me, I think this is a very comfortable place to give comfortable amounts and very reasonable for a 24-year-old. And I would encourage everybody to consider how they could give a little bit more to the places that mean something to them. So for all of my young professionals and perhaps older professionals in general that are on this call, I think it's really easy to ask yourself, adulting is already really hard. I think as we're graduating and moving on and being introduced to the real world, young people right now are realizing that life is not always super easy. And why would you do any of these things when you're literally just trying to, figure out how to replace the batteries in your smoke detector? Like, there's really hard things that come up, but I think this philanthropy in itself does not need to be one of them. So why would you do any of these things? Here's my list of reasons. I can interact with real people. Not to say that there's fake people out there, but I think it's really easy to get into the groove of just going to work and coming home and not seeing people out in your community. So building connections and relationships with my alumni in the area really helps me stay grounded. Giving back my talents definitely helps fill in gaps in your resume and helps with those extra career moves that you want to make long term. And then you can also learn about a new industry by finding a way to give in a place where you might be unfamiliar. So if you are interested in switching careers or changing maybe the function of your job, you can start by volunteering in that sector and then perhaps make the connections and decide if you actually want to do that or not. It also allows you to own a responsibility. So you can choose an area that you want to be successful in and then just be confident in it and pat yourself on the back when you do a great job, because usually I think volunteering is relatively low stakes compared to the other commitments that we have professionally. So this is a way that you can just choose to shine and feel good about it, of course. And then last but not least, you can pay it forward to future Syracuse students and just the community at large as a citizen of your town, of your city, and then as an alum of Syracuse University. So with that, that concludes my presentation. Are there any questions related to giving or how you can engage with your alumni club, or any questions that Jenna and I can answer related to the university during Philanthropy Week? How much time do you give to these involvements? That's a great question. So I think most of the time it depends on what's going on, of course. And for example, with Incluleco, we have board meetings quarterly. So as the secretary, I probably spend maybe like 2 to 5 hours a week leading up to the board meeting to make sure that the minutes are complete and everybody has the call-in details and things like that. But I would say probably not more than like 8 hours a week while I'm working on like a heavier project. And that's obviously spread out among, a couple of nights or a weekend morning. With the alumni club here, it usually involves sometimes really random meetups to exchange swag and make sure that we're on schedule for our events. And we do have weekly board calls every other week that usually last about an hour. So that's very manageable. And then with the Generation Orange Leadership Council, we do have like full day events that require traveling sometimes and different trips. So I think that is potentially one of my larger commitments, but is usually so spread out that it doesn't feel overwhelming for me. Do you have any tips for somebody trying to step out of their comfort zone to volunteer? I would consider the reasons that you want to volunteer and then try to be motivated by those. So if you know that you want to step out of your comfort zone, start with the end in mind and think, maybe after I do this, I'll feel more confident in like X, Y, and Z, and start there as like a motivational standpoint. And then, of course, it's always nice to go with somebody else. So if you invite somebody else along with you, or consider if you know somebody that's done that particular activity, then perhaps it could be easier to be out of your comfort zone when you're in good company. Hopefully that helps. What is your advice on bridging the gap between older and younger alumni? That's a very good question, and I think it's one that I see quite often, or at least I see the challenge in my day-to-day work with the alumni that I meet. Um, I think for me, I know I could probably do a better job at actually introducing my young alumni friends to the older alumni that I've met, and just, you know, finding those intersections and not necessarily finding it intimidating to talk to different people of different age groups. So I think the SU Alumni Club of Atlanta did start a mentoring program, and older alumni could sign up to mentor a young professional, and then they could develop relationships that way. I think another way that you could quote unquote bridge the gap is just having information and events delivered in multiple ways. So um, at one of my jobs, we used to say that you had to deliver information by land, air, and sea. So like you can say the same thing, just deliver it several different ways. So I think older alumni might be turned off by social media, and not everybody's on Facebook, but that is our main method of communicating quickly and efficiently and having RSVPs for events. And so I think, having Facebook, but then also having somebody that's available to actually like call people and say, hey, we're having this event. Will you come? Yes or no? And making sure that everybody is feeling included is um, a great a great tip, because you can really um, miss opportunities for engagement, I think, when you just rely too heavily on like online communication and get wrapped up in graphics and social media, as compared to making sure that the quality of interactions is what is really at the forefront. All right, thank you for your questions.
Great.
Oh, wait.
Oh, it looks like someone is
Oh,
typing.
okay.
Sorry. Oh,
If there's any other questions, feel free to drop them in the box. And just as a next step, if you want to get more engaged in Syracuse University alumni activities, you can go to the website there. I always encourage people to hire Orange and celebrate SU during this philanthropy week. And then if anybody has any questions or wants to reach out to me, you can email me there.
excellent. Great. Thank you so much, Nicole. This was a great presentation. I always learn something new from the presenters of the webinar series, so it's always good for me as well. Thank you to everyone that participated and asked questions and engaged back and forth. I hope you found this to be useful information and take it a step further and get involved in whatever ways you see fit for yourself. Like she mentioned, time, talent, treasure, all of them are very, very important and very much appreciative. And then, it can continue to come full circle for you as well. Like she said, it equals better career moves, etc. So great job, Nicole. This will all be recorded and sent out to you via the link once it is uploaded, and a survey will be in that email as well. We definitely ask for your feedback as this is an ever-changing and growing program. And if you or anyone know of anyone that is interested in participating, we're always looking for people that have a certain expertise or interest in a subject matter related to personal or professional growth across the board. And feel free to reach out to me with that information or for anything else that you'd like to get involved with, because definitely, as she mentioned, a lot of opportunities through career services to connect with alumni and current students. So thanks again, Nicole. I appreciate that. And we'll hope to see everyone back here for the next one in April.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Jenna. And thank you, everybody, for participating. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Enjoy your day.